far as a little bit of an agenda, we will pretty much be in the input tab for, I'm going to say, like 90-95% of the session. Just a couple of other things that I'll bring into play just to kind of explain certain topics. But yeah, just opening the input, starting from kind of page to page. A little bit of a disclaimer that I definitely really want to make is don't put too much bearing on some of the things that I select, right? I'm going to focus on some of the ones that bring up some additional questions and stuff like that. But whether I choose, zoning R2 or something like that, please disregard that. That the goal isn't for me to go and find that and like really that's stuff that of course you are going to have all of that information because you filled out your property information sheet. So I may skip things like I may not select that the driveway is paved or something like that. Okay, I'm focused more on the utility in general, understanding how to flow through it. Definitely don't put too much bearing on some of the selections I make. More there just for training purposes. But you'll see kind of as we go along. But throughout, we are definitely also going to be addressing some comparisons to OMDREB. So if you happen to be out there as a dual member, maybe you have a lot of comfortability putting up a listing on Stratus, well, this would be a really good session to get a very solid understanding of how to approach this input tab on Matrix, because some of the things may be a little bit different, and I will absolutely point out some comparables and differences. So without further ado, let's absolutely jump into our input tab. What I will do, I did completely forget to just kind of remove this one from our last session, so let me just delete that real quick. So I'll delete the incoming status listing. Oops, there we go. Okay, so I'll go back to the input tab. Perfect. Okay, wanted this to be completely blank, so we'll just start from a clean slate. Okay, and of course, we will be going right from scratch here. We're going to add a completely new listing. And we will be going through a residential ad edit, just to keep it as something as general as possible, something that probably most commonly, because it is more of a simplified form, it's probably going to be more of the one that you do if it is your first listing that's going up. As soon as we click on this option, definitely some things to note. Okay, across the top, we're faced with 3 different ways that we can start the input. Okay, we can either fill it from across property, we can start with a blank listing, or we could actually fill some information from GeoWarehouse. Okay, I'm going to just give a brief introduction of all 3 so that you have a couple of pros and cons when you're going to choose one of these. Okay, you'll notice that by default, this first option is currently selected. So it is anything that happens below here is referring to the fact that it's, if I go down this form, it will be filling from across property. Okay, if I select one of the other 2 options, then it would present me with those different opportunities. So right from the get-go here, I will absolutely mention that out of the 3 options that you have, this first one is the one that I stay away from the most. I don't typically use this option, okay? And we'll talk about that a little bit. So if you think about the property that you're putting up on the market, well, it very well have, maybe it was on the market 6 months or 12 months ago, or in some cases, maybe it was on the market 10 years ago. And you found some information on the system about it and you kind of want to pull that in. Well, that's good. It could set some of the groundwork for you. However, the really, really important thing to note is, and the reason why I stay away from this option is because if all of that work has been put in by a different agent, right, someone that's not yourself, well, as soon as you click that submit button, if you haven't been thorough enough in the information that they've put on, well, you just took ownership for it. Okay, so if there's any mistake that fell through the cracks and it happens to be there, the bearing falls on you right away. So if you're using cross property, you're taking ownership for the information that's there, and that's usually kind of the main reason why I stay away from it. The time that I'd be a lot more comfortable with this option is if perhaps I've just signed a new agreement with my client, and maybe it was me personally that listed this property for my client just 6 months back or 12 months back. Well, I would be a lot more comfortable pulling in information that I know I've overlooked, and you know, just that whole scenario, right? So kind of consider what's there, the information. If you pull from cross property, just be extremely sure that everything in there is correct, okay? Because you're now taking ownership for that information. It's going to fill things into all the boxes, right? Where now it's on you to kind of find if there's an error in there. Okay, but you can absolutely fill from a property if you'd like. So whether you are putting in the MLS number, if you know, let's say like the 307 number for this property that was listed 6 months ago, you could just enter it in, and then the system will track it down so you can make the link. Your other option is skipping this MLS number and running a search. So if you're just searching for the property in the system, maybe you're unsure of the MLS number exactly, well, you would fill out this form and then you would hit search. Okay, this would be you tracking down that property so that you could pull some information from it. So that is kind of my soapbox of cross property. So on to option number 2. Okay, and based on how I just described cross property, you'd be right in assuming that I like this blank, starting from a blank listing, as a much better option. This is really like when you go and you set up this agreement with your client, you undoubtedly are going to be filling out a property information sheet or an info data sheet that has all the information of the property. Yourself and your client, you're going to sign on the information that's there, right? It's so much better that you maybe carry that over and use that information rather than trying to save yourself a bit of time by choosing the information someone else did. Okay, so starting with a blank listing, very, very safe option in that regard. So feel free to use that one absolutely. This one is going to be extremely similar to option 2. Okay, filling from GeoWarehouse, what is going to happen, and if perhaps you haven't had a chance to use GeoWarehouse at all, it is a tool that you do have access to. You can see it in the top right-hand side of your screen here. I'll just click on that now. So GeoWarehouse is it's basically all this aggregated information. It's all MPAC data that's put on by Terranet, where you'll get some very insightful information about properties. You'll notice here, I just opened it up. I'll give you a really brief intro here where I'm just going to kind of zoom in, and as I do that, you're going to notice all these property borders, these lot lines that are popping up, right? And you're going to start to see some information already, just even visually, right? We can tell. So I just kind of zoomed towards where I believed our Oakville office to be, 125 Navy Street here, just a little bit north of Lakeshore Road. If you have happened to been at that office in the past, well, we could see some things, right? We can see that based on these property lines, we might be able to see some encroachments, some different things, right? You can really gauge a whole bunch of information in different ways here just by pulling up GeoWarehouse. I find that whenever I'm searching for listings on the system, I always have a GeoWarehouse tab open, and I'm checking as much information as I can on this end as well, while I search through not only the public remarks and the information of the property, well, use other tools at your disposal as well. And this is a really, really good tool to get some info. If we go in here and we click a property report, for example, well, it's going to start breaking down a whole bunch of other things, right? Frontage, depth, a little bit of a Google Street View. Okay, we've got like satellite views, all this different stuff, including perhaps the last time that the property actually exchanged hands, which in this case seems to be 1994 at I mean, extremely great price. What a steal. I have no idea what this property is worth nowadays, but it's going to be a lot compared to that. So, but you can really get some quick information here, including your legal land description. And that would be really kind of the whole point of using the GeoWarehouse. So if I close this up, we're going to open it back up when we go to use the option. the geo warehouse option is going to be very close to starting as a blank listing. What it will pull, however, is some minor information to save you the trouble of copying it over, right? Things like confirming your address, the way that it's spelt, the legal land description. Um, there's a couple of things such as your PIN and your ARN that are going to come through that are going to be extremely useful, because then when a potential buyer or a buyer representation is searching for your property, they're going to be one click away from seeing that MPAC data. If you pull in the PIN and the ARN, which you'll see in a moment, no matter what, you're going to have a GeoWarehouse link on your listing, which makes it so much easier for them to find important information. It's just like a really good option to have attached, and all of that happens when you use this option. Everything else will be blank, but there's like 4 or 5 key components that pull through. GeoWarehouse is really, really good for that. So this is the option that we will choose today, not the first one on cross property or the second one being blank listing. We will use GeoWarehouse to start our base here. So I'll just select that option. As soon as we do select that, now you can see that it is the GeoWarehouse one that's been checked off. We have we need to make a link between Matrix and GeoWarehouse. Just got to make sure it's correct and acknowledge it, and then it can pull the info. So we can either do that by putting in a 9-digit PIN, which we would go to GeoWarehouse to track down, or we could type in some details of the property, and Matrix can make the link to track it down between Matrix and GeoWarehouse. So I want to show you this option. Okay, we will end up copying in our PIN because I find it much simpler to do it that way. The reason for that is because if you remember from even searching from properties on Monday, well, this search option is very rigid, right? If I was to type in something like 125 Navy, just remember, the search utility on Matrix is rigid in the sense that if I don't include all options that it wants, or I make a slight error, right? It's not like Google. It's not going to tell me, hey, did you mean 125 Navy Street, Oakville, right? It's not very forgiving in that sense. And I'll show you that right now by omitting the word Oakville. If I just put 125 Navy and run the search, apparently it didn't find what I was looking for. Okay, if I type in Oakville, start adding in extra information, well, maybe it won't get confused, right? We'll run the search again here with 3 pieces of information, and now it's found the link between Matrix and GeoWarehouse. Okay, so I'll revise the search here. So you saw it didn't work with 125 Navy, but it worked when I put in Oakville, and then it kind of made the connection. Okay, well, I mean, looks like unit number is optional. So it looks like it gives us a little message, all 3 need to be done, but you might kind of overlook this option when you go to do it, right? So when it comes to the 9-digit PIN, let's track that one down. So what I want to show you instead is when you open up GeoWarehouse, right? I just wanted to take us back to kind of, what am I doing? I went to web forms here. Sorry, so let's click on GeoWarehouse. I don't know where my mind was at with that one. Let's click on Geo, and I find that this search is just so much more forgiving in the sense that if I start to type something like 125 Navy Street, right, I don't have to get as far as typing 125 Navy Oakville, which is that, really rigid search that I had to do on Matrix. I haven't even typed the entire thing, and it's already giving me suggestions, most likely the correct one, okay? So again, this search bar is just a lot easier to use, not as rigid. So I prefer to take this option, right? We can get a visual of where the property is rather than just like one line that describes it. We're a lot more confident that we have the right place. And then what we can do is, as you can see, even without opening the property report, I've got my PIN and my ARN already displayed. If I go and select this right here, I just copy this 9-digit PIN, right? Well, if we go back to our Matrix tab and drop this in, just by pasting it, right, we could see the 9 digits. Okay, run the search. and it yields the exact same result, except we didn't have to worry about finding it in Matrix by typing property details. We went and used the easier search bar on Geo and made the link in a different way. Okay. So at this point, Geo Warehouse and Matrix are kind of communicating. We have a bit of a confirmation. We know that the owners are OMDREB, and we have the correct address. Well, at this point, let's hit fill and see what it has given us. Okay, so we'll hit this option. And I did get a message as well. Sorry that I didn't answer straight away. So will you be posting a recording of the session to the OMDREB member website? Yes, absolutely. So this is all of this. So this was a kind of a private message. I know I saw the question may have came up a couple times, but this one was privately. Absolutely. In case you missed that previously, all of these sessions are recorded and posted. Maybe a couple days just for editing, and then I'll update the video. I know I've got a couple of them that I need to update, but all of our sessions are put up on the OMDREB website, and when we go to conclude the session, I will show you all where you can access that. Absolutely. Okay. So I'll just bring us back to our residential ad edit, where now we're on the first page of getting started with the actual information. Okay, so a couple things to note straight away. This form should look very familiar, right? The way that it's laid out. If we work from the top and we start to think about, okay, the property subtype, the way that this form is kind of laid out from left to right, it really is meant to mimic kind of the way that a property information sheet is structured, right? If you look at a property information sheet, it pretty much starts with property subtype, transaction type, right? The ARN and PIN are going to be up there towards the top of the page, and then you get into address details. So just notice that it's meant to look that way, so to make it as easy as possible, because you are going to be transferring over that information one by one in each field. Okay. So we can kind of make our way down. We've got some utilities near the bottom. Okay, you'll be able to see these a lot better most likely on your own computer or device. I've really zoomed in just to make the training easier to see visually, but you have those options. So saving it, validating, we're going to talk about all these as we go through, of course. Okay. So I have another question here privately. For a residential lot, which has all the permits for the property to be built, what kind of form to input the listing do we use? Okay, really good question there. So that's a very, very specific scenario. Anytime that you consider whether it currently is land, if there had previously been a structure on the lot in the past, all the steps that came into play with this new development or this new build that's going in, whenever you approach anything that has those labels like new build, land, new scenario, right? These aren't things that have a standard form. They're approached case by case, and if you're running into that situation, the best thing that you can do, honestly, is contact our MLS department, where we can work together to make sure that everything is correct as you approach that. Because there are so many hypotheticals and questions to answer that when you answer them, it might be a totally different type of input that you do in the end. Okay, so it is, yes, absolutely. Help desk is a great place to start. Start a little bit of a rapport there. Most likely would be kind of Stephanie, one of our MLS specialists that would probably be working with you on that. But that is something that there's no aspect of it that's standard. It really does depend on so many different things. Okay, but as soon as you start that conversation, we'll definitely point you in the right direction. Okay, but really good question. Thanks for sharing that. So as we bring us back around here, you're very welcome. As we work back around here, we will start to select some options. What I'll do is I'll fill out this first page. What I want you to notice, definitely though, okay, and not to be overlooked, is you're not locked into this general page at any point. Okay, if I wanted to right now, just want to show you quickly, and we'll make our way back. If I want to jump to the room details and I want to input the rooms right now, nothing's stopping me from doing that first. Okay, maybe I want to do my brokerage information or my, realtor information and just start there and then come and do my general stuff later. You're not locked into this linear direction, okay, from general to map to additional, okay? But you can follow this flow if it makes it more, easily approachable for you. Okay, just know that it's totally open. It's not going to block me from hopping over to the additional info right now. Okay. Another thing as well, understand that this form is dynamic. So if I choose an option like condominium from the beginning here, well, it's going to yield very different mandatory fields than if I choose freehold, right? It's going to show me some different sections of the form that are going to be some things that are optional right now might change. Okay, so understand that the form is going to change as you work your way down. If this is one of the first times that you approach the form, also recognize that fields that are mandatory are kind of highlighted in this, I don't know what this is, like sort of yellowy, orangish color. These ones are mandatory, where the ones that are currently white are currently optional. Okay, again, could change as you work through. But as far as GeoWarehouse, it has pulled through from our GeoWarehouse fill things like our ARN, our PIN, address, legal land description, some of that important information that we want anyways. It's taking care of copying those over, which, right, it's not overwhelmingly going to save us so like a crazy amount of time, but at least we have a confirmation here, right? You remember we had a visual confirmation of the property. It's going to go a long way that you have a solid base. So I really do like that GeoWarehouse option when we compare all three ways that you can begin this. Okay. So let me go ahead and select some options. As I mentioned previously, when one comes up that we should chat about a little bit, things that we get questions about, I will definitely say a few words. But all this is going to be pretty general, right, to what you have on your info data sheet. So don't get too hung up on the options I choose. Which brings us to our first one that usually we get a lot of questions. It's our neighborhood section here. Okay, so I will show you a very effective way to get the correct neighborhood on your listing. Okay, and we are going to approach that as soon as we jump into the map tab. So for now, just note I'm going to leave this blank. Right at this point, maybe I'm familiar with Oakville, but I don't know. Is this a part of Central Oakville? Is it a part of Old Oakville? Could it be a different one? Maybe I'm not completely well versed with exactly which neighborhood it lands in. Well, I'll show you how you can get that confirmation so it's right every time. Okay, but we're going to get to that in a couple steps. Let's just leave it blank for now. We can always come back to it. Okay, a little bit of information here. Some things may change. I'll put a really quick description here. Okay, of course, yours is going to be a lot more descriptive than that. Let me see. And gonna have to make something up here. Again, I don't know the current value, but let me just put some stuff down. Okay, so here, taxes. You'll see in a moment. I'll validate the page in a second, and we'll talk about that. Well, these are part of the dynamic fields. These are going to end up being mandatory. You'll see that in a second. And contract commencement. For sure, a couple of words to say about this one. We do get a lot of questions. So how the contract commencement date works is legally, okay, you have within 24 hours to list your client's property on the market from the date that you sign this contract commencement. Okay, so if we had come to an agreement and we signed that the representation is going to begin the 17th of June, that means that I have 24 hours, okay, which puts us tomorrow night at midnight. That would be my deadline to put up this property and list it on the market. Okay, so I'll repeat that one more time. If the agreement states that today was our contract commencement date, right, I would have until midnight tomorrow night, which is just like one business day or 24 hours, however you want to look at it, midnight tomorrow night, this has to be a live, active listing. Okay. Let's just choose, well, we will just choose, for simplicity, we'll choose today as the contract commencement date. If for any reason something came up, you weren't able to fulfill this, okay, slipped our minds, client had something else going on, whatever the case may be, Monday, you're like way outside, like next Monday kind of thing, you're way outside. Let's have a look at that date just so we can, yeah, Monday the 22nd, right? This would be our contract date that we have to have it up by, boom, boom, boom. We're way outside of our contract commencement. If we're trying to list this and put it up on the 22nd of June, well, you're going to have to amend the paperwork so that it's correct. Okay, that's the bottom line. You're going to have to go back to your client, fill out whichever paperwork you have to. Your paperwork is going to have to match so this contract commencement date is correct. Okay, and then you can go ahead and list the property. But you're going to have to take care of that before you put it up. Okay, expiry date, of course, this is going to be all part of what you decide with your client. I'll just choose something simple here. Let's go end of July. It's going to be a short one, six weeks. Okay, possession date, optional. Okay, we'll just put a couple things. And the next option I really want to show you here, okay, is the validate option. Not to be overlooked, the validate option really is going to be your best friend as you work through this form. Okay, I'm going to select that option now. What validate is going to do is go over the entire input, double check all the sections that need to be addressed. Okay, the ones that it's okay with, such as what I've selected here, freehold, sale, right? These are all okay, and it will also give us an idea of any additional ones that maybe they have changed because of something like a dynamic choice that we've made. Okay, so always, as you fill out options, you don't have to fill out the whole page. If you want to just make a couple selections, click on your validate option, go back, continue with your work. Okay. So at this point, I've got a couple questions. I'm just going to kind of leave this where it is for a second. I'll kind of address those. I have one privately that came in, something to do with just when we have a commencement date and an exclusive listing. Okay, well, when you have an exclusive listing, unless I'm missing something, right? And think about an exclusive listing, it's going to be approached differently. If it's exclusive, you're probably not going to be putting it up on the public MLS system. It's going to be totally different, right? So your exclusive listing is going to have to do with whatever contract you have. That's totally separate, totally different than the MLS system. That's an exclusive listing. That's kind of where it stems from, right? If you're doing a public listing, one that's being represented on the open market here, that's going on an MLS system, well, then that's where you're going to have this contract commencement. We're just looking at, if you're putting a property on the MLS system, you sign a contract commencement, you have until midnight the following day to list this property for it to be accessible. The public has to be able to access and see this listing is being marketed within 24 hours of when this contract commencement is signed for. Okay, if it begins the 17th, you have until midnight the 18th. Hopefully that's really straightforward. Okay. Another question, I'll just read it. I haven't had a chance to see it just yet. If paperwork is signed on the 17th and we are listing on the 18th, system will allow us to use the June 17th commencement date. Correct. Yes, if I'm reading that right, absolutely. So if the contract commencement date is beginning on the 17th, everything is signed. We're working on this tomorrow. Like if I just haven't got to it today, we're working on it tomorrow. It could even be 10 p.m. Yes, I could still choose the 17th. The system will accept it. Okay, and you're just going to have the paperwork to back that up, but the system will accept that. It's only when it's outside of that window that the system will start to tell you maybe a bit of an exclamation mark here, like, whoa, that's a bit too far out. You missed the 24-hour window. But if you're doing the next day, right, it will accept it. Absolutely. Okay, yeah, no problem. Okay, so we're seeing a couple other options as well, right? If you remember, these ones weren't all mandatory. We know neighborhood was, but we're getting some new stuff that came through with the validation option. I mentioned the tax one would pop up. Let's scroll back up I'll just start from the top, make sure we didn't miss anything. We will absolutely come back to neighborhood. Okay, I'll choose a couple things here. Just erase this. I'll leave these blank. I want to just see if they are forcing me to choose them. Okay, taxes, right? This is going to be part of your information here. So this is for the previous year. So tax year 2019, right? You will have some information of what the taxes were paid, and you're going to have to state that. Again, I'm going to just choose a random number here, but you're going to have documentation to represent that. Let's go with validate. We've only put in like 4 or 5 new options here. Let's just validate and work through. Okay, so it looks like it wants our frontage and depth. So let's kind of pull that from Geo Warehouse. I don't have builder's plans or property, the subdivision information or anything in front of me. So for right now, I will use what's on Geo Warehouse. Let's go with this one. We'll copy the frontage. Looks like that's already set out. I'll erase the little FT for feet. Copy the depth. Perfect. Okay, now let's validate. And what I'm trying to get with this is to only have neighborhood with an exclamation point. Okay, so we know we're coming back to that one, but we have successfully filled out kind of our first part of the form here, okay, our general section. So I've got from a contract commencement date, can we input early? Number of days. Okay, really good question there. And this may be something that you would have to test, to tell you the truth. I haven't kind of run into a scenario where I've done that personally. I mean, it really is supposed to be the contract commencement date. So I may save the input and save it as incomplete, but I really don't see why you would put it early. It's almost like you sign an agreement with your client, your paperwork is set to begin on the 17th of June. Right, don't click submit until the 17th of June. The system, I'd even have to test it. It may allow it like a certain number of hours before, or like, I don't know if it's exactly like 12:01 that evening or something when it ticks over to the 17th. But I may have to kind of get back to you on that one. I'd say like if this document states that the commencement is the 17th of June, don't click submit until the 17th of June. Okay, even if the system allows it, just don't get in that scenario. Start on the 17th. Start with what your agreement is. You don't want anything ever coming back to you that doesn't match the paperwork you have. Okay, so definitely lean towards just going with this and knowing that the system will allow you the 24-hour window that you have been provided. Okay, that is there, and you have to have it in by a certain date, but don't go with the early one. Okay, let's at this point definitely jump over to the map. Couple things to address in here. The map tab does go pretty quickly. It really is like one or two things you have to do on here. So let's approach those right now. So what the map is asking us to do in this case is we need to set the latitude and longitude so that we can accurately pin where this property is on the map. And when anyone goes to search for our property, physically, where it like lands on the map visually is gonna be stemmed from this pin that we set latitude and longitude for, okay? To avoid a lot of headaches, I'm gonna tell you right now, we are going to be clicking set latitude and longitude manually. All I wanna do first off is show you what a bit of a nightmare scenario can look like if you don't do this properly, okay? Because it's very easy to get this correct, but it's also very easy to get this so wrong. I'll show you some examples, okay? Let's open up a public tool that hopefully you've had a chance to take a peek at, but let's go to realtor.ca. I'm gonna type in Oakville so that it gives us the map, okay? So we're gonna come back to Matrix, of course, in just a second. I'll just show you this real quick. I'm gonna start to zoom out, and there's always always culprits here. Hopefully one day they will go away and they won't exist anymore. But what I'm going to do actually is show you pins all the way across a different part of the globe here. See, I'm seeing a bunch of them. One day these will not exist anymore, but for now we can definitely make some statements about them. So we have southern Russia here, even Mongolia it looks like. Let's zoom in on a couple of these and get some information. So if I go and hover this, we're going to see that, let's go with maybe just clicking this guy. Okay, so I've got some properties, and remember, this is realtor.ca. These are properties in Canada. Well, we can go all the way to the other side of the globe. Here we're in southern Russia, and we're seeing 72 Cardinal Crescent, Regina, Saskatchewan. We have Abulet Drive, Regina, Saskatchewan. Okay, these are public listings available on the market that, unfortunately, the listing agent has got their latitude and longitude completely wrong. It's not on the right place. It's not on the right place on the globe even. Never mind just being a couple streets over. This is going to be very tough to track down this property, right? We have a one in Calgary, Alberta, and what's our last one here? Vancouver, BC. Okay, so I don't typically see Ontario listings show up in this way, which hopefully that's a good thing. Hopefully it's based on kind of good training and stuff like that. But honestly, like this is the nightmare of what can happen if you just don't take the time to do this properly. Okay, so let's close this up, and I'll show you right now how to get your property location correct every single time. And it starts by clicking on Setting Latitude, Longitude manually. Okay, let's select that option here. You'll notice that because we pulled in the info from Geo and on our General tab, we have a bit of an address already set out. So the system has an idea of where the property is going to be. Okay, you'll notice that when you enter this map, I can't point at it with my finger or anything right now, but there's a bit of a little crosshair, right? That's kind of telling me that I can kind of drop a pin on this map, right? Well, if I zoom in on this map and I drop the pin where I believe this property is, okay, I can zoom in even more, right? If we remember, it was the corner of Navy and Church. Well, if I just click on the map, it drops a pin. Once it's on there, you can move the pin around. You can set it to where you want. Just get this on, somewhere within the borders of the property line. Okay, so we're on Matrix right now. If I was to click on Geo Warehouse, okay, it should look very similar. Navy and Church, that lot, right? I just have to pin somewhere on this lot. The shape it has is this rectangle right here. It's about a half acre or less than a half acre, kind of by description. If I just drop this pin somewhere on the building, somewhere on the property, just get it in the right spot. Okay, and once you've done that, you just hit locate. Okay, locate is going to be what kind of centers this pin and reconfirms that you're in the right place. Okay, so we put it right in the center of kind of the rectangle lot. And if we hit done, it is automatically going to pull in all the correct decimal places for our latitude and our longitude based on what we just selected. Okay, that's the pin that we had dropped. We don't have to go in and, I don't know, pull up, Google and copy these, or I don't know how the other options from those Saskatchewan realtors got so far to the other side of the globe. I don't know what they did to cause that, but just do this manually, drop your pin, hit locate, like 2 steps, and you have the correct location. Okay, really important to get this right. Got a quick question here. If the listing is on OMDREB already, does it automatically cross board to OMDREB, or do you have to enter it on the OMDREB manually this way? Okay, really good question. I don't know why I haven't even tested that before. That's a good one. So we do have a data share in place where, yeah, if I was doing a property in Oakville, and I listed it already on Stratus, well, I could see that property. I believe it's something like a 15-minute window. I will be able to see it when I search on Matrix for it. okay, specifically Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills. We do have the share with OMDREB in place. I may have to test that because I don't have a direct answer. I'm thinking that what you're asking is, can I do a cross property and pull some information? We may have to kind of look into that. Near the end of the session, we'll open for kind of question and answer. Maybe we can try and see if we have any luck with that. Okay, but I actually haven't tried that. The data share is newer. I mean, it's been around for just around this time, or first quarter last year is when it came out. But that's one that I've got to try out for myself. Really, really good question. So what we've done at this point is we set our latitude and longitude. Okay. If we make our way to even the general tab, you'll notice we don't have an exclamation point on our map anymore. It's happy with the information and the change that we've made there. Okay, so that's our map tab is complete. As soon as you set this manually, you locate, you're done with the map. Okay, but there is one thing I want to jump in here and show you really quickly. And if you remember, that has to do with finding the correct neighborhood. So let's, I'm going to click on this option again, set lat long manually. I'm not going to make any changes to it, but I'm just going to go in to bring your attention to a tool at the top of the map named layers. It's like a little stack of blueprints, okay? A little obscure, maybe you haven't used it before, but it can be very, very effective here. And in this case, if we click on it, so I'll zoom out a little bit actually first, just before I click it. Let's do that. If I click on layers, it gives you these different map options that you can put as an overlay over top of your map. Okay, and in this case, we have the option to click on neighborhood. Okay, so you'll notice this cayenne or kind of like purplish line come up on our screen here, right? As soon as I activate that. So I click on the neighborhoods, so the layers icon, I select or deselect neighborhoods, right? Well, when I go to zoom out, what it's doing is it's dropping all the board neighborhoods right onto my map for me. It's going to allow us to see all of the ones from any participating board in Ortus, right? Not only Oakville, but you can see all of these from any of the map tools that you have on Matrix. Well, this one is going to help us and indicate when we zoom in. You know, you got to give it a little second to load, and then it kind of, I know it could look a little crazy as you try to do it quickly here, but as you zoom in, it's going to give us a much better indication of, hey, like which neighborhood is this property really a part of? Which border is it within? Was it Central Oakville? Maybe not. That one seems to be cut off at the water here. Well, it puts us in Old Oakville. Now we have a confirmation. We know we got our neighborhood correct. Okay, and it all came from, if you remember, the layers icon by activating neighborhoods on this map. Okay, so I haven't changed anything. If you remember, we just came in to look at that tool. If I hit cancel, okay, it's just going to keep the information I had before, but we can now go over to the general tab. We only had one thing left to select. We know now that it's this information, 101300 for Old Oakville. We know we're in the right location. We have the right neighborhood. Okay, and we can go down and hit validate. And at this point, we've gone and we have checked off in full 2 of our major options here, starting with general and map are already done. Okay, so I'd say really, really good to kind of approach those in that way, especially when you get to your map. Use set latitude, longitude manually, because you will get this correct every time if you take the time to do it properly. Okay. So where we're going to move into right now, okay, I'll have a peek into, like, the one I really want to talk about, definitely in the rooms here. There's some comparisons to make between OMDREB and or Matrix and Stratus. Okay, so we'll talk about those in a moment. Pretty much where we go into concluding the session. I'll try not to spend too long on them. And then I'll just show you how you can change the status. Okay, but what I want to show you in here is definitely, just remember, right, all this information is going to come through from your property information sheet. So I don't want to get too hung up on the information that we have here. Okay, I'm briefly looking through the options we have. This one I want to say a quick word about because we do get questions. So for the square footage, okay, you'll notice right now it's mandatory, right? I have to state the square footage I have to state the source. Is it builder's plans? Did I get this from public records? Okay. The reason why I'm noting this is because in comparison to Stratus, this field is not mandatory for a TREB agent that's posting this on Stratus. Okay. You have to state it here. So when you search for a property in Oakville, just understand that. Okay. And I even got some questions about that earlier today. I had a client, a member, a member that was calling in and or kind of talking back and forth by email saying, hey, I was running some searches. When I search for some properties and I do, 1,500 square feet or more, why is it that I'm kind of hiding a whole bunch of my listing options? I'm seeing a lot of the Oakville ones, but still, some of them. It seems like, and really, in the end, the question they were asking was like, "Hey, have these listing agents just overlooked it? Have they forgot, to write it in? Why can I not find them?" Well, understand that a lot of the properties you're going to find in Oakville, or some of them, are going to be shared in from Stratus, where this is not mandatory. So if I state in my search that I'm looking for only properties that are 3,000 square feet and above, well, I'm most likely going to hide all of the Toronto shared listings because it's going to be blank. If they don't have this as a field, it's probably going to be blank. Maybe a Toronto agent has stated it in the public remarks. Maybe they stated it elsewhere, but it's not mandatory. So make that connection. Okay, just understand that some things are different. So use the system for kind of definitely understand that. But when you're inputting, and this is the same for all participating boards of Ortus, if a Guelph agent makes a listing on Matrix, they must state the square footage. Okay, it's just not mandatory for TREB. So avoid searching based on things like square footage. Okay. Good question there. We have Natasha is GeoWarehouse considered public record, or is it other for the square foot source? As one of these things, even the fact that you have a source in general just means that you have to have some paperwork. We're not massive sticklers for it. So an option like public records or other, you're totally fine with either. Both are perfect. Okay, to answer as plainly as possible. Not something that you would get penalized for. That's totally, either one is absolutely perfect. The fact that you have one is all that matters. Okay, just that if the odd time that someone's viewing your listing and there's a discrepancy of 50 square feet between what you wrote, well, you can just tell us where you got it, and that is enough. Okay, we're not going to go to like some legal counsel and fight for this. Like, if you have something that states it, like maybe there's a slight difference between the builder's plans and the geo plans, as long as you state it and you have something written that represents it, you are more than protected. Okay, yeah, I get that question sometimes as well. Just all those options are perfect. Okay, don't worry too much about that. So let's get into the rooms. Again, I'm not going to jump in and these are all things that you will have from your info data sheet. You took the time to write these in. No sense in me selecting them and hitting validate. Okay, the rest I think are pretty straightforward. Let's get to the rooms and talk about the differences between Matrix and Stratus. Okay, so when you go to add on a room, it's going to be important that you add on, all the rooms of the property. For some of them, if you have it available, you're going to want to put in as much information as you can, like the dimensions. Okay, some of the rooms, the dimensions are even mandatory, and we're going to see some of that come up. Okay, sometimes you have to put the dimensions, sometimes you have to put the room features. So let's consider that. We'll start with a really basic common room here. Let's go with a main floor bedroom. If I choose main floor bedroom, remember it's a dynamic form. Okay, I'm just going to go hit validate here. Geez, it's really far down for me. Sorry, I'm really zoomed in. If I hit validate, well, get an extra little confirmation here. For a bedroom, the system really wants me to state the dimensions. So we will provide that. Okay. It allows us to choose whether we want metric or imperial. If you make a change here and hit validate, okay, I would expect those exclamation points to move down to, if you want to use meters, you have the option. okay? But by default, it's just set to imperial. Use your feet and inches. If you do not have the builder's plans, you do not know the dimensions, or you don't have any paperwork that you can track down, and you're at home trying to fill this out, okay? That's where maybe that 24-hour window comes in for you to list this property. It's mandatory that you put this information, and I hate to say that, I hate to say it like this, but to be plain, you may have to measure the room. You may have to go physically to the property and get this measurement. Okay, if you have absolutely no way of tracking down a document that has it, so you can state it properly, you might have to use, conventional method like a tape measure, laser pointer. Okay, this is stuff that you definitely want to be writing down when you're filling out your property information sheet. Make sure you have it because it does come up. Okay. But yes, you do have to put the dimensions of a bedroom. I'm going to put something really general just so we can get to the kind of next options here. So I'll just go 20 by 20. Let's hit validate. There we go. Okay, perfect. So with this, we would have completed just what is mandatory for a bedroom. If you have more information about it, put as much as you can. It's only going to help, promote the property more. So if you have other information, go ahead and add it in. But this is the bare minimum for a bedroom. Let's do a bathroom now. So if I go main floor, bathroom. Okay, and also maybe time to kind of note as well, it's important that I'm doing these in the order that I want them to be set out. Okay, there's not a way that I can, drag this one and move it to the top. So maybe have a bit of a plan set out. If you have these written down in front of you, choose the order that you want them to show up in the list, right? If I had a main floor bedroom and then this was an ensuite, I'd probably do this option next, not, 6 rooms later. Just bear that in mind. Do them in the order that you would like to have them in. I'm going to do a general one here again. Let's go main floor bathroom. Rather than enter any information here, I will hit validate once again. Sorry, I really hope that's not making you too dizzy when I scroll down like that. But when I hit validate, you'll notice a bathroom is a little bit different. Okay, and it does give us some indication at the top of the screen here regarding rooms. My dimensions on a bathroom are not mandatory. However, the room features are mandatory. Okay, and what it's pointing to is these options over here. The mandatory part to select is whether it is a half bath or a full bath. Okay, and your definition for those, if you are taking down some notes or anything like that, is that a full bath would be described by any bathroom that has 3 pieces or more. Okay, if it had 4 pieces, it'd be a full bath. 3, still a full bath. Anything lower than a 3-piece bath, if it was just a sink and a toilet, then it would be a half bath. If it's a sink, a toilet, and a bath, well, then it would be a full bath. Okay, bear that in mind. Okay. Okay. Getting really specific about Nella, I might actually have to get back to you on that one as well. I want to say that it's 1, but I may have to kind of look into that one. So as far as kind of describing them, absolutely, you do want to kind of, this is the part that is mandatory to select, okay? So what I'll do is I will select this 3-piece. We're going to say that this bathroom is a full bath in this case, okay? Something with the description of like a sink, a toilet, and a shower perhaps. Okay, let's go ahead and select that. I'm gonna hit validate. Okay, and what I would do, of course, is if I had the dimensions of this bathroom, I would not keep that out, right? I would type in absolutely the information here, even though it's optional and you could see that you don't have to include it. If you have the information, more information is just better. Just definitely as much as you can put in, go with it, okay? If you're really pressed for time on the listing, it's like 11:30, you're kind of meeting a deadline, okay? If you need to save the time, maybe come back and make this edit later, but really, like as much as you can put in is only going to help you, okay? Going with an extra option here, and we're going to talk about what a half bath and a full bath looks like with the decimal places in a second. That's where we're going to compare the Stratus system. One more room that I want to show you very, very quickly here is a room that's below grade. something like a basement. If I do basement bedroom and I go ahead and choose, well, we know it's going to be mandatory. I'll keep it the same. 2 by 20 feet 2 inches on both. Very square room. Let's hit validate here. Okay, we would have right now 3 rooms set out: a main floor bedroom, a main floor bathroom, and in this case, a basement as well. Okay, well, I really want to talk about this basement option because how basements come through and how half piece, half bath, full bath, how all that comes into play and how it's compared to Stratus is going to be very relevant for a lot of you. So let's do a bit of a discussion about that one first, just before we jump into the next section. I'm going to hit delete on this extra one. We don't need that extra, but I mean, you are going to do your rooms one at a time. If you have a family room, kitchen, right, you're going to put some details so that whoever's looking at the property can have that information and consider if it's the right fit for them. Okay, but we just went very simple here, went for the ones that kind of raise some questions sometimes. We're going to get to public remarks in just a moment, but let's jump in and make that comparison that I mentioned. Okay, half baths, let's talk about things like that. For that, I'm just going to move my screen over. I've got a couple of visuals that we're just going to discuss here that give us a bit of an indication. Okay, and what I want to mention as well is looks like for this session I've gone extremely thorough on it. We just passed the 2 p.m. mark. Okay, so at this point, I do want to say, if you have prior commitments, I know it was said that this would just go till 2 p.m. I've got around maybe 10 or 15 minutes of content left before I'll open the floor for questions, where you can just ask me anything. We can go through some extra stuff. But just as far as this last piece, discuss comparisons to Stratus and look at status changes, probably going to take us till 2:15. So if you can make it for that extra bit, please feel free to stick around. If you have somewhere else to be, just reach out to me and I can show you where you can find this recording. It's going to go up in a few days, and you can always watch that 15 minutes later, maybe that you've missed. Okay, but I do apologize. I did go over my time here. Sorry about that, but I'm not going to go and try to speed through it. I'm just going to stay at the same pace, and we should be wrapped up by about 2:15, and then we'll have questions. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Completely understandable. To catch that last bit, the 15 minutes, tune in to when we put the recording up, and you can catch that at your own leisure. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Absolutely. Okay. So let me go ahead and jump into that bedrooms and bathrooms comparison, because it is going to be pretty important for some of you. I'm going to open up this first image that I've taken. So I just took a bit of a screenshot here of a property that's up on, well, this was a picture I took, what is it? Definitely a few weeks ago. I don't know if this is still an active property, but I just did a random search, pulled something up that I thought would be a good comparison here. Maybe zoom in a tiny bit. Okay, so this is a listing in Oakville. And what I want to talk about is the part that I've highlighted here. Okay, first off, if you are this listing representation, sorry, but we're using you as an example. But what we've got is a total bedrooms, total bathrooms. And what I want to really talk about is what in the world is 5+1 and 3.2. Because these are the things that are going to be really important to understand if you're comparing listings from this system. If you're looking at listings on Stratus, some of these are going to be a bit different. Okay, so let's definitely get an understanding of what that is. Okay. Just talk about this one first. Let's stick on just total bedrooms. So we know that this property is going to have 6 bedrooms. What the 5+1 is trying to tell us is that 5 of the bedrooms will be either the main floor or above. And the +1 is just saying that there's a room in the basement. Okay, so wherever these 6 bedrooms are made up from, 5 of them will be above ground and 1 will be below ground or below grade. Okay, that's all the 5+1 means. But the important thing to note is that 5+1 does mean something different on Stratus. Okay, it means a +1 on Stratus is a den. Very, very different than a bedroom below grade. Okay. A den is going to be kind of like a smaller room, right? That maybe you're going to have as just like a tiny office or something. It just didn't qualify to be a bedroom, okay? But just note that on Matrix, for all boards of Ortus, if you see 5+1, the +1 is a room below grade. On Stratus, +1, a den, okay? We're going to look at that a bit further as well in a second. Let me just tell you a little bit about what this bathroom is pointing out. What is 3.2? So what I can deduce, not to use too crazy a word, not to deduce from, so from this number, what I would be able to tell very quickly here is that this property has a total of 5 bathrooms, okay? 3 of the bathrooms, which are over here, are full baths, and 2 of the bathrooms are half baths. On the Matrix system, any bathroom that is 2 pieces or less, okay, making it a half bath, is going to be 0.1. So as you can see, there's a 0.2 here. That means that there's 2 half baths. 3 full baths, 2 half baths. We know the property right away has 5 bathrooms in this entire house, okay? When comparing to Stratus and to one of those listings that a OMDREB agent may have put up, the decimal place is a little bit different with the system they chose. So they've put it out that a half bath for them is a 0.5. It's going to look very different because if you're looking at this property on Stratus, you might see this as 4.0. Those 2.5s came together and made a whole number. There's still 5 bedrooms in the property, but on Stratus, it might show up as bathrooms 4.0. When you look a little bit further into it, you'll find that there are 5 bathrooms, and in fact, 3 are full baths, 2 are half baths. Okay, let's look at both of these options one more time with the second kind of image I've pulled up here. Okay, so what's going on is I just previously we were on the listing part of the image, right? Oh, maybe that's too far zoomed in. Okay, previously I was on the listing tab for the other image. Here we just clicked on the rooms tab where you can see really like every room has been broken down. This listing agent has put the dimensions very specifically, even the metric dimensions. A lot of information has been put in, really well put together kind of listing here. Okay, but let's point to some of those figures if you remember from the previous example, right? If you remember, we had 5+1 for the bedrooms. Well, we can see that here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bedrooms are what looks like main floor and above. And all 5 just happen to be on, they're all on the second floor. But we do have a bedroom in the basement as well. And this is the one that's referring to the +1, a room that's below grade, okay? We also see a very good breakdown of why and how we came up with a 3.2. We have 3 bathrooms that have 3 pieces or more. They're all on the second floor, these 3 bathrooms. And then we have the 2 that make up the 0.2, which are half baths. Okay, we have 1 on the main floor and 1 in the basement. And in total, we have a 3.2, which gives us the total of 5 bathrooms. Okay, so whenever you're looking at a listing, you can go in between the listing information, the details on the rooms. You'll be able to come up with this information. Just make sure that you understand the differences with how they show up on Stratus and how they show up on Matrix. Okay, and then you should be good to go. If there's any questions or clarification required here, we definitely can kind of jump back to this. Once we do the question and answer, I'd be happy to kind of make sure that everybody understands this really well. Okay, but let's get definitely kind of onto our next topic there. Okay, and now that we tackled all the types of rooms and the comparisons that you may run into, let's kind of just go through and consider the last bits of our form here. So first off, public remarks. Okay, important things to state about the public remarks. They're just that, right? They're going to be public, and if you consider how properties are marketed these days, especially with tools such as realtor.ca, it's really important to understand that the public remarks are not only going to be viewed by realtors or other colleagues in the market, It really could be just about anyone looking at this. Okay, so it's going to be really important that first off, as always, that you try very hard to keep out any spelling mistakes. But I would definitely lean away from this. Right? Too often I see public remarks that are specifically written only for the eyes of a realtor or another real estate agent. Not everyone's going to understand that. Your potential buyer that's going to be looking at this property may have no background in real estate, but they may be very interested in what you have. Well, write a very well put together message that describes the property and avoid those shorthands, those kind of silly things that maybe only a real estate agent would know what that means. Okay, just bear that in mind. Your audience is very vast. It's not only buyer representation. There are people in the market looking for properties that might just find it on something like realtor.ca or another application. Okay, so write something that's going to apply to everybody in general, make it as simple as possible, but also put something really nice together that describes the property. It's only going to help you. And you have a lot of space to do that, right? If I just start to write, I'm going to copy and paste this and just continue to go. Every time I write this message, you'll see my characters are kind of going down. Well, I haven't even reached the 1,500 characters, and I've already typed up a massive paragraph. Okay, you have a lot of space. Make use of that space. Write something really awesome about the property that everyone's going to understand. It's going to go a long way. Okay, don't just put one sentence. Write something. Make it personable. You're marketing the property. Do something awesome. Okay, so I'm not going to put anything in there. We're just going to move down. It looks like that really does kind of conclude this part of the form. So your public remarks are on the room and detail section. The very last one that we have here is our brokerage information. This is where you have your private sensitive realtor information, your commission structure, things that are not going to pull through automatically to realtor.ca or anything like that. But this is all going to be set out between your agreement to your client, your contract with your brokerage. That's, again, all stuff that you're going to be able to answer for yourself. So I'm not going to start selecting silly options or anything. In general, our form is pretty well filled out here. Okay. So if we go and really the next part that I want to show you is if you're not finished your work just yet, right? We filled out a good, maybe more than half or half of kind of what we would be setting out. Like we have work to do in the rooms, of course. Well, maybe at this point, right, we're planning on putting this listing up tomorrow when our when we have a bit more. If we didn't have all the info and we have to go measure some of those rooms, well, at this point I would want to save this so that I can complete that tomorrow or complete it later this evening, right? So let's talk about saving as incomplete. This is vital that you get this right. Okay, I would hate to hear a story where you spent an hour, 2 hours slowly, meticulously going through every single thing, and then you forgot to save it, or you didn't save it properly. Okay, so if I hit save as incomplete, one very important thing must happen. You have to see this message. Input succeeded. Your listing has been successfully saved as incomplete, and it even provides you with an MLS number. This is the one that your listing is going to hold, this MLS number. Okay, if you do not see this message, you have not saved your listing. Doesn't matter how many times you click it. If you don't see this, it's not saved yet. Be really careful with that. Okay, and I'm kind of really stressing that. I'll show you why. Okay, if I click on continue editing, just consider this. Okay, let's go down and let's just purposefully break this form. Where I like to kind of show this is on something like possession date. It's a totally optional field. But as you can see, right, if I click on the calendar and I choose something like possession date 15th of July, well, it's set out in the format of month, day, year. If I come through here, I'm going quickly, I'm not looking at it too well, and I put something like this. Maybe the possession date is to be determined. Well, I have no business entering this in here in the first place. It's an optional field. Okay. I am also going to break the form because it has to be a date set out in that, what we saw just now, the month, date, year type of setup. Well, when I hit validate on this, actually, wait, I'm not even going to hit validate. I'm just going to hit save as incomplete with to be determined in here. If you remember, last time that we clicked save as incomplete, it provided us with a confirmation that it's saved. That has not happened. Instead, it's trying to tell us with, right, we have way more exclamation points going on, but it's just specifying before we can save your work, address this. There's something wrong, okay? You'll notice nothing's orange anymore. The form is just very specifically trying to tell me that there's an error that we need to address, like this one. If we take this away and we save it as incomplete, now it's saved, okay? Until you see this, even if I clicked save as incomplete before, it had not saved. It only saves if you see this confirmation. It's so important, okay? If you click save as incomplete and you don't get this, go back and find out why, because you need to see this or else your work is going to be gone, okay? You need to see this. You need an MLS number. This is your important confirmation. If you want to save while you're working, save every 30 minutes. That's for your own peace of mind. Just as long as you get this, you have a saved input, okay? It'll stay as an incoming listing until you're ready to submit it. When you save, you also have now the option to add some documentation. This is when you would add photos to your listing. Okay, you browse your computer, you attach all the photos in the order that you would like them to show up. Okay, you have a maximum of 40 that you can attach here. Tell a really good story of how the property looks. Use as many as you'd like. 50 is a massive number, so really kind of do what kind of works for you. But tell a really good story here. I'm going to hit cancel. I'm not adding any photos just now. Okay. Another thing as well. Okay, and as a final piece to leave with you, if we know this is saved because we got our confirmation. I'm just going to jump out of this tab. The very last thing I want to show you is just what the the modify listing looks like. If I go back to the input, okay, you'll notice that the one we just worked on, and we have our MLS number here. Well, we can see that now we can choose this one. It's an incoming listing, right? This modify listing form is where you're going to find all of your status changes as you move over to a firm sale and it closes completely. You go through all of your active statuses to your pending, your closed. It all happens here on your modify listing screen. Yours is going to look very different than mine, okay? Please disregard. This is all administration staff. This is a very, very different kind of account that I'm on currently. But for the training, right, yours might just look, you might just have the options that are set out by your brokerage for what access you have. But this is the place where you're going to make this modification. Your listing will go to active eventually. It will eventually close at some point. Everything kind of happens on this modify listing. And it also gives you the option to manage your photos, your supplements, and things like that. Okay. As far as everything that we've discussed today, just to bring in a very, very quick conclusion, okay, just remember, we did kind of cover quite a few different topics. But when it comes to approaching the input tab, some key things that are really, really going to go a long way are starting from a good base, something like Geo Warehouse, okay, moving into that main page. Every time that you enter a couple of options, you always want to use your validate option to confirm that you're on the right track. Okay, validate, few options, hit validate. When you're looking for your neighborhood, it's something that you're going to pull from the map tab. You're going to set that latitude, longitude manually and locate your pin. As soon as you start on that footing, everything else kind of falls into place and you have a really, really solid foundation to go with. Okay. Remember that the aspects of the rooms, there's some comparisons to make, some notes to take, and you do have bedrooms mandatory for the dimensions, and bathrooms are mandatory for the number of pieces in that bathroom.